inspiring action.
You're tuned into the all-new Action One Network. Turn up your volume.
All right. Hi, everybody. This is Shen Ge. Welcome to SG2 on Space, the only weekly space show here in Houston.
Yay!
Yay! Okay, congrats. Thank you, Irene. This is episode number 18. Before I introduce who our guest is here today, I would like to say, hopefully you guys are following Action One Media as well as SG2 on Space. So if you are not following, you should go on facebook.com/Action One Media. I'm sure everybody knows how to spell action. One, that's O-N-E, and media. And mine is facebook.com/The Shen Show, THESHEN, and show, SHOW. And of course, you can always go to the website. We are a1.com, WEAREA, and then number 1.com. And last but not least, please support me at patreon.com/SG2. Okay, so with that, this is Irene Branker. Just a quick little background, according to what she has told me. I actually first met her at a event called NASA iTech a number of months back. And if you guys have listened to a previous show, I have interviewed someone else from there, Dr. Jack. Yeah.
Jacques Zanafeld.
Yeah, there you go. Well, yeah. Thank you, Irene. Yes. There's certain people's names I really can't pronounce, but interestingly enough, there were quite a lot of bio companies there, and so that was one. And Irene here actually has that background as well. So just a quick note here: she was born in what is formerly the Soviet Union. And she came to America as a refugee and had a privilege of her early childhood in Chicago's very diverse Rogers Park neighborhood, where the street called Devon Avenue transitioned from Golda Meir Boulevard to Mahatma Gandhi Lane. So that's lovingly referred to as an immigrant ally. Also, very important note, she's a 3 times cancer survivor. She's also a serial entrepreneur, and, associated with that, 20-plus year veteran revenue hacker, whose adventures have led her all around the globe, although she now currently resides in Austin, Texas. And as of latest, her newest venture is Diwali Incorporated, spelled Devali, which is a textile-based health and safety innovation startup developing products for the senior, sports, military, and medical markets, which is on a mission to save lives. All right. And the long-term goal here for Diwali is to predict and prevent heart attacks and strokes, which also has a personal story associated with it. Yeah. So, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's I think I covered most of the bases. So, with that, let's talk about how. Oh, I should also definitely mention here before we continue, is that this week was actually a large human research conference, a human research program, HRP, held in Galveston, Texas. Essentially, NASA holds this conference every year around this time, and it's 4 days, pretty much full days, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. of talks as well as poster sessions related to everything to do with human research associated with space. All right, so space human research. So, and I invited Irene there, and obviously it would be a good place for her to be.
I didn't even know that it was going on until you invited me, so thank you.
All right, yeah, and I know you're going to be there tomorrow, so that's wonderful. Now I could spend a whole session talking about what I learned, but let's not do that. So instead, let's just jump right in. So Irene, tell me about how you. I think I gave a pretty brief background. So let's start with your latest venture, Diwali. What were you doing before then, and then how did you suddenly decide, hey, let's do this? I know it was just formed like 6 months ago.
Yeah. So Diwali, we started the company about 6 months ago in June. I actually had another company previously called SenseTech, and we did really well. We won 2 CES awards, 2 World Changing Idea awards, and in May separated from partners because the partners were in another country, and sometimes we do business very differently. Mm-hmm. And things that are okay there are maybe not as okay here, and we just had differences. So I learned a lot. But within an hour of separating from partners, I literally had my entire R&D team basically say, hey, what are we doing now? So we opened up Diwali fairly quickly. We learned a lot from the last venture, and there's a lot more that we want to do to really expand and really understand the entire human system, right? So now we've moved into textile-based device, so basically within clothing, because we realize that most people don't want to wear something extra. They don't want something to replace their favorite watch or replace their anything. It has to be something that fits into people's daily lives.
So I understand that you're doing something with socks.
Mm-hmm.
So you wear, like, I think most people wear socks. So these socks, instead of just, something that's wrapped around your feet to keep you warm and clean, all that, it now has sensors as well, right?
Correct. So a couple pieces on that, right? So socks were really interesting because we were looking at the at-risk population, and the most at-risk population is the senior market. And if we look at, they say that 70% of seniors will ultimately have dementia, at least, some form of dementia. One thing that's particularly interesting is that things that they don't recognize from before, they want to take them off, which is why sometimes, companies, water management systems have issues because they'll have a chip in a bracelet or something else that they don't recognize, and it's just something that bothers them.
Right.
We think that if it's in the socks and, people are used to wearing socks, as long as it's comfortable, they won't recognize that there's something extra in those socks. So it'll just feel like normal to them, but we're able to read a whole host of information from it. We're literally planning on, from a pair of socks, reading the respiratory system, the cardiovascular system, the nervous system. With the additional garments, we could also read circulation.
How are you able to do that with just a sock or two socks?
That's the thing. It's not just a sock, right? So obviously, your regular old cotton socks aren't going to cut it for this.
Oh, no.
So we're actually putting sensors and electronics in, and even more so, it's beyond the sensors. What's really valuable here are the algorithms that actually analyze and compile the data. It's not just data points, but actually creating usable insights.
So hold on 1 second. We're still talking about socks, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about sensors and thinking a bunch of electronics. So it's like, how is that going to fit inside your shoe? And why would somebody want to walk around with a bunch of metal things on your socks?
That's the really fun part. There's so much innovation that we're not talking about a bunch of metal stuff.
You're saying it's not like this phone?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. Actually, we're talking about very small. Ultimately, certain sensors could actually be embedded. Some of them may actually just be drawn onto the fabric. There's so much innovation. I can't talk too much about that.
No, you don't need to give away your IP.
But I will tell you that there's so much that can be done now without it being this whole big extra thing, right?
Right.
There's a way, and granted, depending on which version we go with, what might make the most sense is going to be a removable device that's still thin, comfortable, flexible, waterproof. But concept sock, everything could be embedded, right?
That's remarkable.
For, everyday use, if you have a pair of $500 socks, you still have to change your socks. So I think very few people would be able to afford it, but who knows, over the next few years, as materials and innovation continue to, get lower costs, we may be able to have everything embedded.
That makes sense. You just said $500, right?
Well, I mean, that's just kind of a throw out estimate of if everything is embedded, right? It removable, for the senior market, we're looking at something that ultimately has to be under $100.
That's understandable.
Plus, having a number of different socks that it can be put into and removed and put into. But it still has to be waterproof, because as someone who was a caregiver of seniors, my grandparents, it will inevitably go through the wash.
I can believe that. So with that, let's take a short break, and then afterwards we will go back to socks or possibly something else.
Action 1, doing it for the culture.
When the 7 trumpets sound, we gon' start the revolution. When we turn up, we shut it down. We are skywalkers. The spheres of my Kabbalah, illuminated properly in sight, shows the man in universe and the creator's gift of life. When the earth collides with every piece of star from afar, there's a higher probability to find out what we are. Trapped in time and space, lost in this dimension. 7 sins committed daily. Never did I fail to mention religion is the rapture. I capture every piece of star power with this mic to evolve and conquer all collapsing darkness with this
tuned
light.
into the
I bear
all-new
to
Action
witness
One
any slightest hint of change
Turn
in this
up the
existence, being reminiscent of the first age. Awake, aware.
Everybody say, get in the action!
Get in the action!
What he dabbing on him, okay.
Get in the action! Yo, we in here dabbing on the reel. Y'all stay tuned, more to come. Action One Media Group. It's time to get into action, man. For real.
In your face.
All right, and we're back. This is episode 18. You're listening to SG2 on Space. And here with me is Irene Brinker, who is the CEO and founder of Diwali Incorporated, textile-based health and safety innovation startup. Basically doing some really interesting things. Before we went on break, we were talking about socks. So specifically, specialized socks which could monitor all aspects of your health. Yeah, very interesting. So you said, I believe you said you're working with a company called Thorlos.
Mm-hmm.
What is Thorlos, and what are you guys planning to do?
So Thorlo is actually they're the only socks that are clinically proven to actually improve foot health. And so, you know, as a startup, a lot of people try and do everything. So people are like, oh, are you going to make your own socks? No, I'm not in the sock business.
Really?
We're not going to learn how to make socks.
We've been talking about socks for a while, but go on.
But Thorlo has over 60 patents on socks and things to do with socks. Like, I don't need to recreate the wheel. I definitely don't want to take amazing, innovative technology and stick it into some, like, cheap, direct from China, $1 socks. I want to go with the best socks. And so we actually partnered with Thorlo. They're 100% U.S. American-made company. They're based out of North Carolina. And their markets really kind of aligned with us. Not only do they actually improve foot health, but also their markets, they have the senior market. They were just inducted into I believe it's a Sports Goods Hall of Fame last year, and they have the outdoor sports market, as well as, you know, medical and compression socks, an area that they're really interested in, mainly initially from the diabetic space as a personal passion project for them. And so I think it's a really good fit. And their CEO, Lynn Thornburg, he also is an attorney with a lot of experience in licensing. So we're actually going to co-patent the pocket that holds the device for the removables. And then because he has so much experience in licensing, then that can be licensed into other garments, right? So whether it's, we start with socks, but we can then license that into, let's say, leggings for women, or gloves, or, you know, we're talking about several different things.
Let me ask you this. So you're saying these devices is removable and you can stick it in some other garment?
So there's two things that we're looking at, right? We would love to do everything embedded, but the cost of that would probably make it, just because of the cost of materials and everything else, it would make it something that's out of reach for your everyday user, right? Because you have to have more than one pair of socks. So if everything is embedded in the socks, those become very expensive socks, and your average senior on a fixed income is, you know, they can't pay that.
Right.
However, if we make it removable, then they can have A, different types of socks, and B, the device could be removed from one pair of socks, put into a different pair of socks, so you can change your socks multiple times.
Okay, that's great, because I don't anticipate wearing the same pair of socks, or really anybody. But the question here is, did you say that it has to touch the skin?
Yes, which is why we have to actually create a special pocket to hold it, because not only does it have to touch the skin, it has to stay in one place.
What do you mean stay in one place?
So depending on which sensors, we need it to, in order to have that data be relevant, it needs to be from the same place without moving around a whole lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means that's another reason why socks were such a great use case, because you have compression socks where the fabric can actually hold that in. And so looking at different materials to create that pocket, and then what happens across the other part of the sock on the outside to hold it, we can actually create that kind of compression, make it super comfortable, but make sure that it's tight enough in the places that it needs to be so that we have direct skin contact.
Have you, are you currently at the stage where you're actually testing these socks?
No.
Not yet.
Not yet. So we have a modular development timeline. And what I mean by module is that we create modules, not just a sensor module as in this is this sensor, but we look at, okay, what do we want this module to do? Is it reading, is it breath pattern recognition? Is it blood oxygen saturation? Is it, emotions, reading, understanding emotions? What does this particular module do, right? And then we create that module so it's a standalone. So all of our modules have different technology readiness levels.
When you say modules, you're saying different kinds of sensors or programs associated with it? I guess it's combined.
Well, it's combined. It's both. So where we can use sensors that already exist, right? Where there's something that gives us the data that we want, that we need, we're happy to use what's already out there and license that, or however that works. If there's something we can reprogram in order to get the data that we need, we're happy to do that. But if it just doesn't exist, my team is going to make it.
All right, I think I understand. You just, now out of all these different sensors, since there's a lot of them, what are you primarily trying to do? I mean, I'm guessing if you want to do all these things, there will need to be multiple devices, or are you thinking of just having one device that can do everything?
Yeah, one device that can do everything.
How is that possible?
Well, the only time it gets tricky and we need to actually have multiple devices is when we're looking at circulation. But for respiratory, nervous system, and cardiovascular, we're combining multiple sensors with our proprietary algorithms to be able to read the whole human. Part of the problem right now is that everything, kind of like, our healthcare system in the US, we're only looking at things in pieces, we're not looking at the whole, right? If we look, for example, at, the Apple Watch, or at Fitbit, if you look at social media, it went viral a couple months ago where people were actually using an Apple Watch to measure the heart rate of their banana.
Yes.
Or toilet paper roll.
You know what? I know you told me that. I need to look it up. Measure heart rate of a banana.
Yeah.
With an Apple Watch.
Yeah.
Now, your device would never do that.
Well, our device would actually recognize that this thing is not alive, that it's not a heartbeat, right? The problem is, it's kind of like with medicine right now, we're treating symptoms as if they're the root cause. Our goal is to read the entire human so that we can understand how all these pieces actually work together, right? For example, if I just tell you your core body temperature is elevated, that could be any number of things, right? That could be, you just went for a run and it was hot outside and you haven't drank any water, so your core body temperature is going to be elevated, or it could be a fever.
Well,
we don't know unless we look at other things. But if we look at your core body temperature is elevated and your autonomic nervous system is depressed, well, now these are signs of a potential infection.
Right.
So if you have that data to know that you might be coming down with something, you might make the choice to not go out for drinks with your friends, but stay home and take care of yourself and have the next week without the flu.
Okay, that makes sense. So essentially what you're saying is that the current wearable devices out there, such as the very popular Apple Watch, is very limited in what it could actually detect, and hence it does not provide a holistic set of measurements, which basically could do silly things like measure the heartbeat of a banana. Whereas what Diwali is producing is a sensor, or rather a device, which is able to get a whole set of various measurements, which then provide a much more accurate assessment based on these various conditions and
Yeah.
such. All right, that makes sense. Now you did say for what was it, circulatory system, you would need something else.
Yeah.
Why is like what? How would you measure that even?
So with circulatory system, we would actually have to have the same measurement happen in multiple places on the body so that we could understand actual blood flow and if there's a blockage somewhere, right? Because you can see when it happens, where, right? So imagine, you know, if we're trying to understand in flight, let's say for pilots, right? So let's say fighter pilots, we're trying to understand how G-force affects circulation. Well, I mean, there's a couple of different theories. Some say it all goes to your feet, some say it all goes to your head, like we hear in space. And now they're kind of like going, okay, well, what if they sleep on different beds? And without going too far into the weeds, you know, there's a lot of different things that could happen. So understanding circulation to really understand what G-force, you know, what, you know, where these changes start to happen, we have to be measuring at different places. For example, at the ankle, at the calf, maybe something at the hip, maybe something at the wrist, at the neck, right? The temples. These are all different areas that we could be looking at, you know, where that blood flow is happening.
Right. Well, it would sound like for circulatory system measurements, you will need a bunch of sensors, which will require somebody to wear a lot of clothing.
Well, hopefully, you know, nobody's flying a plane naked.
That is true. Okay. So I suppose with that, it's a more specialized application then, right? So.
Yeah, that's a more specialized application. I don't think you're going to need to climb a mountain wearing a whole bunch of sensors, because I'm pretty sure if you're climbing a mountain, like understanding circulation while you're climbing it is probably not your number one thing. But things like your, you know, respiratory rate and breath patterns, like where you do better, you know, understanding how your body responds to altitude changes.
So right now you've talked about seniors, you talked about fighter pilots, briefly mentioned astronauts. What about ordinary people? Do you find that, since, you know, is that going to be applicable?
Yes. So that's the one thing, you know, with what we're reading, we're reading the entire human system, so I think it depends on what data is important to you. But if we look at, you know, regular people, the things that are important to you personally are going to be different than what's important to someone else, right? But I think what's really interesting here, because we are reading so much data and we're planning on creating multiple user interfaces, for regular people, that could help them with everything from people who are trying to lose weight to better understand their stress levels so that they can reduce cortisol levels, which reduces the storage of belly fat. That's the same data that, you know, let's say, you know, mission control would be looking at with astronauts, stress level data to make sure that everyone's getting along, and, you know, how they're actually able to cognitively, you know, where their cognitive ability might drop, right? But for regular public, that's still very valuable data. Especially if we look at things like cancer, heart disease, even diabetes, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. These are all stress-based diseases. If by reading the nervous system and keeping yourself as level as possible, which, by the way, sometimes it's as little as a few deep breaths, right? Yes.
I feel like I need to do that.
Stabilize your nervous system, right? Because if your nervous system comes back into, you know, standard, without going into too much detail on the nervous system, I don't know if everyone kind of understands that. It's like your nervous system has multiple personalities. You've got Mr. Sympathetic, who's not what you think he is, right? Mr. Sympathetic over here, he's like the fight or flight guy. Like, he's like, yeah, let's do this. And then you've got parasympathetic, who's like your rest and digest, like chill. And the two of them can't be around at the same time. One body, two personalities of your nervous system. So if Mr. Sympathetic is always out, you never get a chance to rest and digest, because that's his job.
Huh. Well, I have to admit that I don't really know much about my own body or biology in general, so I will, you know, I'm pretty sure you're right.
We
So,
have a question from one of our watchers, our listeners, and our audience. It says, "Hi Irene, what's the significance of the name Diwali?" And it's from Smirti.
Awesome. Thank you, Smriti. So for us, Diwali is really meaningful for a number of reasons. Anyone who knows, Diwali, the Indian festival of lights, it's light conquering darkness, right? For me, light is very meaningful personally. My mother passed away when I was 12. Her name was Svetlana. Svet in Russian means light. So anytime there's light conquering darkness, that's kind of my thing. Whether it's lighthouse, light this, it's a thing. So from that aspect, Diwali is very personal and meaningful. But if we break down kind of the word Diwali, first starting with dev, which is obviously the development of new and exciting innovation, right? Also, Diev in Russian is the first part of Devachki, which means girls, which ultimately the word girls is a statement in some ways that can be used to either build us up or break us down, sometimes within the same sentence. And we're a 100% female founded company. And also on top of that, we separated with partners on May 28th and opened up Diwali on June 11th. I think that whole light conquering darkness, it's like a phoenix rising from the ashes of, oh my God, how did everything just fall apart? And that's a whole other conversation with anything to do with startups. To having something that at this point we're a NASA iTech top 10 company, and in March we're part of Hello Tomorrow. We're one of the top 500. Sean has a question.
No, I don't have a
No?
question. I was just for our viewers. I would love for you to explain what NASA iTech and the Hello Tomorrow actually is. So let's start with NASA iTech.
Yeah. So NASA iTech, and I'm probably not the best person to explain this.
Oh, maybe I should explain
Maybe you
it
can
then.
have Kira Blackwell come and explain it.
All right, I explain NASA iTech, and then you can talk about Hello Tomorrow, which I've never heard of until you mentioned it today. So NASA iTech is a pretty new thing that NASA is doing, which essentially is you can think of it as a competition, which is looking at various startup companies, which that particularly targeting those who have sizable terrestrial markets, as well as applications for space, specifically for use for NASA. So in the past year, I'm not sure if they've done it before last year. Pretty sure it's fairly
I don't
new.
think
So in the past year, they held a couple different events where they invited startup companies to give pitches, like elevator pitches, as many startups are pretty familiar with. You go up and you talk and try to convince people that you should be the one that's chosen. And then so the one that Irene went to, representing Diwali, was at I believe there were 10 companies that were chosen, right?
For
Was it 25?
the first one was in Houston, and that was the semifinals, and then the finals were the top 10. So they had a whole bunch of semifinals in different cities and different states, and then they picked the top 25, and then they invited the top 10 to. God, it wasn't that long ago, but I can't even remember where it was. I travel so much, but the big one.
Okay, top 10 to the big one.
Right,
All right.
to the big one, and yeah, that was really
that's
exciting.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
From
And then
hundreds of companies.
and
there
then
were
the
10.
the SpaceCom event, that was something else then?
Yes, so SpaceCom is actually a different, I guess, organization.
Okay. So, all right, sorry. Clearly, I was a little confused. But yes, so the top 10 were chosen to present nationally. And in terms of actual money, I wouldn't say there is NASA funding, but they do offer services and facilities and mentorship.
Well, I think actually in some ways, and this is part of what I call Kira Blackwell's genius. So a lot of like the government, I call them companies or divisions or whatever it might be, that do innovation, they have a budget, right? And that budget is usually given as, grant funding or whatever. Right. So Kira's theory on this, which I find really fascinating, is if you just have this budget and give this budget, then you only get so much. But if you look at the problems that they're trying to solve with NASA, and then you invite a whole bunch of real world investors who already know that NASA has these problems, because that's why these people are here, to solve these particular challenges, but also have this great terrestrial market, that you're going to get these investors to invest in these companies so NASA doesn't have to, right? And so she can make that budget last a lot more, to be able to do a lot more and get a lot more visibility for their companies, right?
Right.
Which I find really fascinating, because, and I don't know what they're up to now, but like I think the iTech companies in total over the past year have raised some crazy number, like in the very high millions.
Honestly, that is something I should follow up with.
It's a lot more money than they originally got to give. Let's put it that way.
Right. I mean, that is not something which the government gives to startup companies, for sure.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the way that she's doing it really is genius, and I give her a lot of credit for that. I think.
So, okay, yeah. I was at the regional iTech event. That's where I met you. And yeah, so let's see. And then the other one that you're talking about is
Hello Tomorrow.
I don't know why I said Hello World, probably from coding. Hello Tomorrow sounds much better.
Yeah.
So what is Hello Tomorrow?
Well, it's really interesting. It's the Hello Tomorrow Global Summit. So how NASA iTech picks the companies that are solving, challenges that they have, and brings in outside investors. This is looking at the entire world and the challenges that the world faces, and looking for deep tech, like high tech, highly engineering, necessary type of startups, and choosing the ones that they really think are going to succeed, starting with the top 500, then exhibiting, I think, is top 200. We didn't make the top 7 in our category, but we are exhibiting as part of that top 200, so it's really exciting.
So you're part of the top 200 companies that will be exhibiting at the Hello Tomorrow.
In Paris in March.
Okay, so.
It's March 13th and 14th and 15th, I think, in Paris.
Okay, so I guess for people who is either in Europe or in Paris or willing to go over there, March 13th through 15th.
Who doesn't want to go to Paris?
Well,
Although the one challenge is it is during South by Southwest.
Right.
So.
Where is this?
What?
Where in Paris?
Oh, that's a really good.
And is Hello Tomorrow an organization or is it an event? Who's hosting it?
These are really great questions. I think if you Google Hello Tomorrow,
I will do so later.
We might get all the answers. I just don't want to give the wrong one.
No worries. But this is this an annual event?
Yes.
Okay, so.
And it's huge.
So, let me ask you this: what did you have to do to get in the top 200? How did you prove that you're worthy? Let's just say.
So it was back and forth of a couple of white papers, which I'm still not sure I'm writing white papers correctly. I don't know the rules on white papers. I just kind of write them, but we must be doing something right, because we did one for NASA iTech too, and pitch decks and the usual like applications and back and forth questions.
So okay, I understand. Now these companies that are chosen, I suppose they're all. I mean, you said that they're supposed to be companies which are different and it's going to make a major impact, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And are these all startup companies?
Yes.
Okay, I see.
The average age of the companies that they're looking at is, the average company is about 2.5 years old.
Wow. And
we are at the 6-month mark.
That's pretty wild, and you're already going to that. That's amazing. So what do you get if you is this just exposure, or is there something else to it?
So a lot like NASA iTech, they're actually putting you in front of investors who are curated because they are in this space. Like this is what they invest in. One of the challenges with deep tech or high tech or whatever you want to call it, basically really engineering heavy stuff. Unlike with software or SaaS businesses, it really is capital intensive on the front end. There's a lot of potential upswing on the back end, but from a business perspective, if we look at most investors,
right,
if they've never done this type of physical product, especially one with such high engineering costs on the front end to develop something that doesn't exist, it can be scary. So there are specific investors in the world who this is what they look for, this is what they do. And so what Hello Tomorrow does is actually curate those types of investors and put them all in one place to meet the companies that they think are really going to make a difference in that space.
Okay, well, all right. I think we've said a lot about Hello Tomorrow. So bringing it back to Diwali now. You said your long-term goal is to prevent heart attacks and strokes. Now, how is that related to what you've been saying so far about monitoring your health? I mean, how does it prevent heart attacks and strokes?
So right now, if you are in the hospital at just the right time and you are hooked up to an EKG machine or ECG machine, whatever you want to call it, at the right time that they can actually see what's going on up to 2 hours before a heart attack happens, they can recognize the patterns and they can keep someone from having a heart attack if all of these conditions are met and right. Ultimately, what we would like to do is essentially have anyone who's wearing our technology be in the right conditions, right? So the way to actually do that, and what I mean by that, because I see your face, you're like, what?
Go on.
Fully autonomous ECG is part of what we're building out. Full waveform, fully autonomous ECG from both feet, right? One of the reasons that's important is because, for example, with the Apple Watch, right? Let's say, it'll even warn you that like your heart rate is high, but you still have to stop what you're doing and you have to do this, right? You have to use your fingers for it to actually read the ECG, and it's a 30-second reading. The chances of you actually catching whatever abnormality after it gave you an alert and after you do this, after you stop whatever you're doing and now you're not doing the same thing, that dramatically lowers the chance of actually catching whatever this issue is, right? With what we're doing, it just pulls that data automatically in whatever time frames, right? Whether it's every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? So you're able to actually see transitions and changes. So as we start to collect the data, because right now there really isn't anything that shows us the data of what does, how the heck does the heart really behave in motion, right? We know what happens in a clinical setting,
right?
But we don't know what happens, in the cockpit of a fighter plane or climbing a mountain, running a marathon.
Or in space, which is something that I would need to bring back to, but let us take a short break, and then we'll get back to talking with Irene here.
The formula, if you follow the formula, you will be successful.
Facts.
You will make it. There's no way that you won't. So I was like, I'm going to listen to all the advice that I can, figure out what this formula is, and then follow it. Now I'm interested in learning how to code, and I'm realizing that program that she did is probably similar to what I would need. So the plan was to spend a few months saving and studying, 3 months of school, 3 months of job hunting, and all of that together put me at a year. Hearing the stories of people who've done exactly what I'm trying to do was very reinforcing. It's not trying to make it to the NBA.
Choose to do Inc.
My name is Dozie O'Harry, the founder/CEO of Choose to Do Inc. Change your mindset, change your outcome. Decide to make that change? Use Choose to Do Inc. Call us at 713-291-6141. 713-291-6141. Choose to Do.
Yo, it's dead in this town. You know, it's crazy. Gotta shake things up. Yeah, for real. Let's go.
Quiet nights, there is no sound. Who needs a life with no fun around? Quiet nights, can't feel a pulse, can't hear a heartbeat. It's time to wake up.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl Janetta, and I am still live at the Indie Fest. This is A1 Live Pop-Up, and I am here with the organizer of this amazing event. This is Mr. Jano, the Sun King. And Jano, I know you're more than just...
All right, and we're back. This is your host, Shinga, and episode number 18. Here I am interviewing Irene Brinker, who is the CEO and founder of Diwali Incorporated, a textile-based health and safety innovation startup that's barely 6 months old, a little bit more, and is already surging full on ahead with pretty much... yeah, I don't know how to describe it. Wearable tech that is textiles. So we started out talking about
groundbreaking stuff.
Pretty much, we started out talking about socks and how you wear socks that can monitor. Let me see if I get it right. Respiratory. Oh my gosh, what's the other two?
Cardiovascular and nervous system.
Cardiovascular and nervous system, all in one device. And then, if you wish, you could have circulatory. There you go. What's the difference
between circulatory and cardiovascular? So
yeah.
Cardiovascular is specifically your heart, whereas and cardiopulmonary is heart and lung, but circulatory is understanding kind of the veins, the arteries, like if there's a blockage somewhere, like how does that blood flow?
Okay, I understand. So understandably, this is a space show, at least to some degree. So actually, to a tremendous degree. So let me ask you this. In terms of relating this device to the use for astronauts, do you feel like it's what could that bring to the table?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, when it comes to astronauts, there's so much that we don't know as far as how space is really affecting their body. And I mean, the Human Research Program, that's all they do is try and figure out how, how does space affect, the human condition. If we're talking about things like, manned missions to Mars and commercial space flight, health is going to be really important. And I'll kind of start with those two. Obviously with Mars, that's going to be a really long flight with no doctors unless they have a doctor there on staff. But what if something happens to that person? Like, how do they treat each other? How do the flight surgeons who are on the ground understand what's going on with their health? How about telemedicine and understanding vital signs so that they can actually make sure that these astronauts are healthy? For space, it's really interesting because I think that this data is really valuable. But even more so when it comes to the nervous system and understanding, cognitive ability at different stress levels. Like, you may have someone who, like, they're okay at, like, regular stress level, but, like, something happens, something clicks. And when they're at this, like, super high stress level, this is your man or lady, like this is the person. And by the way, I grew up in Chicago, so when I say guys or man, it's literally just like a geographic thing. Everyone to me is you guys.
All right, that's fine, I understand. Girls
like,
are included too.
I'm just saying, like I typically, people always look at me funny when I say, yeah, when it comes to this, I'm your guy, and they're like, wait, what? But yeah, anyway, I digress.
So go on.
Yeah, when it comes to that, like to understand who that person is, who you know that when things really hit the fan and things are happening that no one expected to happen, like this is the person who can step up, because every crew needs at least one of that.
Are you saying somehow, I'm just going to use the sock example again, somehow a crew member with your special sock with the measurements, somehow we know that's the person to step up?
Well, obviously, it's not going to just, the socks don't tell you. This comes with testing that they would have to do to understand each astronaut's nervous system before they ever leave. So in training, they would do testing, maybe even a partnership with VR or AR where we can test out different stress levels and different things that are happening and how quickly people respond at different stress levels. Right? Yeah, the socks won't just automatically know. They're not magic socks.
Okay, I understand. You're not wearing magical socks on your way to Mars. You already have this data. Got it.
We have 2 questions from our audience. One of the questions is, how was it being a woman in tech or in an industry where it's male dominated, and how did that affect what you chose to do?
So really interesting. I think I have a very strong personality and a tendency to want to break rules and go against norms. So oddly enough, just about every industry I've ever been in is mainly male dominated. And I think, and I had almost a decade, at the Chicago Board of Trade to kind of season me up. And honestly, in tech has been a lot easier than finance in the 90s and late 90s and 2000s. I'll tell you that. So anyone who wants to connect with me and find out some really funny stories about my first couple of jobs, oh, you will love those. I was typically the only woman, and very interesting situations ensued. But I have to tell you, you just have to develop a thicker skin, right? Like right now, things are so much better for us because people understand that, if you really look at the numbers, that women-led companies are actually pretty darn successful. It's getting through that first round of people actually understanding that you know what you're talking about. That kind of is the hard part. I will say that I have recognized that, let's say I'm somewhere with my husband's there trying to, help me out because I'm probably going to have a lot of people to talk to. Oftentimes he's the one that gets a whole lot of, oh, great, tell me what you're doing. And then he goes, you should talk to my wife, the CEO. And they go, what? My husband is looks like the typical what they expect, right? Like middle-aged dude, right? Like he's just like, you should talk to my wife. He's adorable, by the way. He probably doesn't make weird, well, he does make weird faces, but only when he's hungry.
So do I.
The
hangry face, yeah.
And the second question is pertaining more in depth to how you got started in tech and what it was like and what you would, what advice you would give people who are interested, because it seems like a world totally separate into its own place. So that's the question.
So I think what we need to do as a society and as a culture is get better at understanding that tech is not its own world. That literally, like if we look at math, science, art, I was actually just talking to my sister about this on the phone on my drive over here. These things are all connected. Part of what we need to get better at with the schools is the understanding of not just what this is, just memorize this periodic table, but like how does this actually affect you? What does it mean, right? And I think for a lot of women right now is a great time to go into tech if that's something that they're interested in. Because right now we have so much awareness of that disparity that I have to say, you know, I throw out the fact that we're a 100% female-founded company. I feel like we get some responses because people are like, I've never worked with a woman. I need to. You know.
Oh my gosh.
I think you know that could be a part of it. And don't be afraid to stand up and be like, hey, I'm here and I'm doing this. Who wants to work with me? Right? Because I think part of what I learned, you know, throughout my career is that closed mouths don't get fed. And one of the big differences between men and women is that oftentimes women want to be noticed, whereas men will be like, hey, look at me.
That's what I do.
I guess I kind of do that myself.
No, you do. You have to. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're going to get somewhere, especially when you're, you know, doing something world-changing. So.
And when you're new.
And when you're new, which makes sense. So this is funny you say women-owned business. As you know, some of you may know, Action One Media Group is actually a women-owned business as well.
Yes.
For, you know, so, any case. But... All right, so it's great. Yeah, that's...
Can I do a plug there? If you're in Texas and you are a female founder, the Female Founders Texas Facebook group, ladies, we are over 400 members strong. If you have started a company, are planning on starting a company, have an idea that you want to start a company, request to join. It's a great community. We share resources, and you know what? Honestly, like, it's one of the most honest places. If I'm freaking out, I have no problem like posing and be like, hey guys, I'm kind of freaking out about this. What do you think? And someone in there will slap me straight. And vice versa. And that's kind of what you need as a founder. I think especially as a female founder.
So it's called Female Founders Texas Group, and basically if you are a female and you live, or your company does something in Texas, you should join it. Female Founders Texas Group. And assuming you're on Facebook.
So it's Female Founders TX. Female space Founders space TX.
Okay. I mean, that's great. Are there any other groups?
Oh, there's a whole lot of groups.
Okay, well,
but that is like the group.
The group.
That is the group. The group. And ladies, if you join, feel free to tell us, you know, that you heard it here.
Yeah, of course. Say you heard it from Irene Brinker on SG2 on Space. And I'm not a woman.
Well, it'll just be good to know, like, how you got there.
Exactly, for sure. I mean, why not? So, okay. So that your next big thing looks like is Hello Tomorrow, right? Are there any other things on your horizon for now?
So there's a whole bunch of stuff. One of the issues with being a startup is that oftentimes you don't know what's next because sometimes all this stuff just comes up so last minute. South by Southwest is definitely another one that's coming up. So I've got a couple days of South by Southwest before quickly flying off to Paris. But there's, you know, in between a number of things that are coming up as well that we really just don't know if we're in yet or if we're not in yet. But actually an interesting thing to bring up, not just for anyone in the space startup world, but in the startup world in general, it's really easy to get deterred by the people who say no. But I have, you know, over 20 years in sales. You have to turn it into a game. It's really fun to count the no's until you start getting the yeses, because usually it all comes in waves. And it's really fun to see how much you can cut down on the no wave before your next yes wave.
The no wave to the yes wave.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, if anyone's ever watched, I forgot what it was called, Meerkat Manor, I think, on the Discovery Channel, where meerkats basically all just copy each other. Well, I kind of feel like, you know, startup awards and investors and everyone else, like, the best thing that I could do is like, they're all meerkats. They all want to see what everyone else is doing. And as soon as someone starts going, oh yeah, everyone's like, oh yeah, I knew about that. I was totally on board with that. Like they all want to be in it if they think it's a good thing. And the way that they judge what's a good thing is what other people think is a good thing. And so it's a wave.
No, I totally get it. It's because a lot of people don't have their own minds, in a way. Or they rather want to get into something that's considered hip or popular.
Or also, I mean, we got to think about it like risk, right? So, like, if other people are doing stuff, you feel like someone else has done all the research to see that it's not a big risk. Or that this is like a way better risk, right?
Now, speaking of risk then, what's the risk with your company?
Well, I mean...
Is there any chance of failure?
So here's something that I will
tell you.
Blunt. No, that's a really great question, right? But here's what I like to say, right? If we really look at statistics, people are like, yeah, you know, so many startups fail. But what are you comparing? I mean, if we look at the statistics and the plausibility of my even being alive and sitting here with you right now, I mean, I have beaten odds way better than your average startup odds where they say 1 out of 10 survive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my grandparents were in World War II in Ukraine and Jewish and survived. Mm-hmm. My parents managed to survive. We managed to not only immigrate, not only leave the former Soviet Union, which was its own thing, but get accepted into the U.S. I managed to grow up here. Mm-hmm. I started a company with people there. Mm-hmm. You know, the odds of all of this kind of lining up. Mm-hmm. I've beaten, and not to mention surviving cancer.
Yeah, of course. But I was thinking, when are you going to mention surviving cancer 3 times? I mean, that sounds like beating the odds right there, too. Wow.
You know, what's really crazy with that is, you know, I feel like from one side, it was everything that completely changed my viewpoint on life, on what I'm doing, like what am I doing with my life? I need to be leaving my mark on the world. Mm-hmm. And from the other side, it almost feels like a dream that just kind of like it totally happened, but like it's so far away from my purview, like I don't think about it, right? It's one of those things that kind of like time passing. They say that as you get older, you know, time starts to go faster and faster. But with a startup, it feels like there's never enough time. It all moves really fast, unless you're waiting on something, and then it's super slow.
It's slow. Well, right now it seems like you're going really fast. Okay. Well, I'm definitely glad that you know, you seem to have full confidence, which is really needed. And with your story and background, going back to your grandparents, I can see that, you know, this is nothing compared to that.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at risk and odds of survival, I gauge success not by, and some people say you can't trust someone until they've failed, right? But it's not about failing and being depressed about failing. It's about what you learned from that and being able to move forward and be stronger and implement that. You know, I feel like I've been really lucky in my life to have found success in multiple different areas in multiple different ways, and I don't think it was by accident. I'm just one of those really stubborn people who will continue to work really hard and even work harder if someone says no, because it becomes a challenge to get that yes, especially, if someone tells me that I can't do something. That's my favorite.
I think you can't do this. Your company's gonna fail, and then you're just gonna be on the streets, homeless or something. There you go. And everybody's gonna desert you.
I appreciate that so much.
All right, that's what's gonna happen. So, yes.
I appreciate that so much.
All right. So with that unnecessary comment on my part, it was actually a good, you know, encouragement. You know,
for those of us like me that live in opposite world, believe me, that actually like is that actually really is really powerful.
I actually really have to mean it for it to be an actual encouragement. So for me, it's just, you know, it's just a joke, right? So, but yeah. But with that, I think we have to draw this to a close for now. So this has been SG2 on Space, and it's episode 18. So before I thank our guests, I would just say please follow us on Facebook.com/The Shen Show, THESHENSHOW, as well as follow the media station at Facebook.com/Action1Media, action and the word one, ONE, media. You can also check out the website. We are a1.com, one being the number one. And feel free to support me at patreon.com/SG2 to the number. And I'd like to thank you, Irene, for coming all the way here. Of course, you drove from Galveston due to the conference.
Well, first I drove from Austin to Galveston, but...
Oh, I did not quite realize that. I thought you were already in Houston for some reason.
Well, I had a stop in Houston.
Okay. Right. Okay, understood. So, for those of you in Houston and interested in human research programs, by the way, there's one more day of the conference down in Galveston, and that's...
And I'll be there. You can come and say hello to me.
Yes, so that's on January 25th, and it's pretty much the whole day from 8 until 4. And so I believe it's free, the conference itself. So, if you have time and you're interested and you want to see Irene in person tomorrow, then you can go
Just
talk
look
to
for
her.
the only one with the purple or pink hair.
Yes, she's very conspicuous.
Yeah.
So, all right,
And
thank you.
you.
All right, thank
Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, anytime. All right, let's go change the world now. So.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so take care, everybody. This has been a wonderful Thursday once again, and next week, just a note, I'm going to be interviewing somebody who will be talking about, hopefully, virtual reality and such, whom I met today at the conference. So let's go with that.
This is Brother Atum Ra, and you tuned in to Action One Network.